Do you shop at Kmart? Have I got the graphics card for you? This GTX 1050 can pack a wallop for your games. Run them at breakneck speeds. Faster than your grandmother with a burr up her ass. Need a website? Let's check out Squarespace. The whole idea with Squarespace is elegant and clean. There's no flashy menus and stuff like that. I mean, you can have it if you want, but really it's all about putting your content forward. Before, you had to bring your domain name over to Squarespace. Now, Squarespace is a full domain registrar. You just type your domain name, it automatically fills out everything and lets you know what is available. You can load more. There's a lot of different options here, so go ahead and grab your domain name. Then you can build your website. You can start with just websites, $12 a month. There's plenty of templates available here, and all these templates put the content forward. You can also get down to business with e-commerce. Their websites are integrated with Stripe and also ShipStation, so this is really a powerful e-commerce solution. For bands and artists, they have great portfolio websites. They integrate with services like Bandcamp. One of the other things that's pretty interesting is you're not actually limited to these templates. You can start with a template and make a website that's really cool, but if you want to get nerdy, you have full Git access, so you can pretty much create anything you want. We use Squarespace for our store, and I could not be happier. It's very easy to set up different items, variants, and the layout is clean, so our content is what really matters. Thanks to the Git access, all the templates, all the features, you can really use Squarespace to build a website for anything. Head over to squarespace.com/TechSyndicate, and when you're checking out, use coupon code TechSyndicate to save a little money. My announcer presenter voice says that the GTX 1050 here in my hand is tiny, and for $100, can you really game? That's what we're going to ask in this video. We're not doing like a super intense benchmarking video like we do with some of the bigger cards like the 1060 and the 1070 and the 1080 and the Fury and all that stuff. We're just going to look at this and be like, can you really game with like a $100 card? A lot of people have been looking at the 1050 Ti, and yeah, you can game okay at that one, but if you're, like really trying to scrape every penny out of the freaking couch and you're like, well, this is all I can afford, can you still game? Let's talk about it. First off, the specs. This is 5.7 inches. It's about the same size as your PCI Express slot area, so it slots in there. Speaking of that, takes up 2 spots, but it's only got 1 slot there, and 3 connectors. Dual link DVI, DisplayPort, and that's DisplayPort 1.4, and then there's HDMI 2.0B. A lot of good connectivity options on this little guy. And then as far as the cooling goes, well, we've got the Zotac logo on the fan there, and then they call the aluminum, I guess, heatsink a sunflower design. As far as the fan size goes, it's 90 millimeters. Now, we ran Valley for about 15 minutes and then came back to see how hot this was going to get just with the stock settings. Only got to about 56, 57 degrees Celsius. We may see some of these in a single slot, configuration. So if you want something really small for your LAN rig or whatever, or a media center PC, that voice just came out. So you can probably grab one of these for that in the future if you want to wait. But if not, this one does a really good job of keeping it cool, and it's nice and quiet. As far as power goes, as you can see here, there's a spot there where you can mount like a 6-pin power connector or whatever, but it doesn't need one. It only draws about 75 watts, and the PCI Express can supply that. So you just plug it in, draws the power from the motherboard, and you are good to go. Let's get down into business with the specs, and then we'll talk about gameplay. 640 CUDA cores versus the 768 on the Ti, but this one does run on a little bit higher clock speed. The base clock on this one is 1354, and the boost goes up to 1455. We've seen people push this as far as 1900. So depending on what you do with your cooling, and depending on what you do with, adding a little bit of voltage, you're going to run into a limit at some point since it doesn't have dedicated power. So there's that. It's 128-bit card, 2 gigabytes of GDDR5, whereas the Ti has the 4 gigabytes. And that may be handy if you're playing at 2K and 4K, but at 1080p, it's not going to matter too much unless you have all the filters turned on. Memory clock is 7 gigahertz, and of course it's PCI Express 3.0. This is a 14 nanometer card, so it's, of course, newest stuff. One thing to note on this is it does not have SLI. So you can see on the front here, no SLI. So just like the 1060, no SLI with this guy, but I don't think that's going to affect many people. If you want to spend a couple $100, just get a better graphics card. Now for the gaming, we ran all of our tests at 1080p, and we just wanted to see, because I think people who are in this price range are really going to be playing most of their games at 1080p, possibly 2K. So we ran all these games at 1080p, and we're just going to talk about, hey, can you play this, and at what settings can you play this on? So a little bit different than what we normally do. GTA 5 on what we would call medium settings, and you can see the settings we have on the screen right now. It was over 100 FPS, so I was like, okay, we're like 117 FPS, so let's just crank this up a little bit. And after we cranked it up and just pretty much completely maxed it out, we were still able to get 38 FPS. So not bad. If you've got a G-Sync monitor, then that's not going to be a big deal at all. Under 60 FPS looks pretty smooth on one of those, but people who have this are probably not going to have a G-Sync monitor because those are a little bit pricey. I don't know. Fallout 4, the game's not very optimized, but playing at 1080p on medium, we were around 50 to 60 FPS, completely playable. And Ultra was only 45, so again, very playable on this. Once you get the mods going, that is where you're going to hit your limit with this guy, because you only have 2 gigabytes of memory, and mods are going to add a little bit there, and then you're going to die, basically. Just your computer's going to catch fire, and then everyone you know is going to be in your house hanging out, and they're all going to catch on fire too. CSGO, playing on Dust 2, 200 FPS, actually over 200. It was at least 200 all the time, so nice and fast on CSGO. Tried out Battlefield 1, maybe some people want to play that. Setting it on Ultra, DirectX 11, still able to get 60 FPS. I don't know, this little $100 card was able to do a lot of games at 1080p. Trying it at 4K, it was barely playable. But you know, if you turn it down to the lowest settings on 4K, you still get 40 FPS. Doesn't look as good at 1080 maxed out though, because crappy low settings versus lower resolution with high settings, you know. Now, 1080p, just fine. Every game we threw at this, totally fine. I mean, you can even play Gears of War 4 on this, 1080p. You may not be able to max out all the settings, but because that'll chew up all your video memory, but totally fine. A lot of games at 2K, totally fine. Indie games, and well, I shouldn't insult indie games by saying that they're inferior graphically to AAA titles, but you know, pixel art games and games that don't require as much horsepower will run just fine at 4K. So the main thing here, this card is extremely fast when it comes to 1080p gaming for the money. In fact, I'm not sure if there's a sweeter price to performance ratio out there. Maybe the 1050 Ti is a pretty good option, but I mean, for just low budget, there you go. We're probably going to use this in our console killer PC that we're going to put together very soon. I'll try to do that for, you know, $200 or $300. Well, a little bit over $300, but this little guy right here would do a hell of a job at, you know, making your games look way better than consoles, running them smoother. 1080p. That's pretty much the end of this video. That's it. So let us know what you thought of this. Like I said, it wasn't as nerdy as our regular GPU reviews, but I think this card is a sort of a special spot and deserved a different look for a different type of person who's going to be buying this. So let us know what you thought. Click on all the stuff over there, grab some t-shirts, and we'll see you guys on the forum. Stay tuned. It's lovely. Sunflowers. Get if you're rich, get a bouquet of these. That's a dumb joke.